All right, welcome everyone. I'm Wes Warren. I'm here with Dr. Ron Peterson, and we're going to be talking about getting out of network, how to do that, how to do it smart, and what it would look like. So obviously, a lot of people have been squeezed, right? Employees asking for more money, obviously labs and supplies, same thing, costs going up and up and up, and insurance reimbursement not keeping up. Let's just put it that way. So it's making a lot of doctors question whether they should be in network or not, or certainly eliminating some plans, right? So first, Dr. Peterson, why don't you give us some statistics that you've learned as far as how many people are in network, how many people are fee for purely cash, no reimbursement at all? What's that look like nationwide?
Well, the numbers can vary depending on the source, but the numbers I see most frequently are in the age group of 19 to 64, in other words, employable adults, that 60% roughly have some kind of dental insurance through employer or similar situation. About 20% have some form of government coverage, Medicare, Medicaid, Advantage programs, so forth. And then that means roughly 20% or so of employables in that age group are uh, have no insurance of any kind. So they're essentially the true fee-for-service patients. So that's kind of the statistics we're working with. And I think those are important because it's surprising that there's as high a number of people that have some kind of insurance uh, or or HMO, which we really don't talk much about, but certainly PPO is the main form now. The old indemnity insurance is pretty much a relic of the past. So we're dealing mostly with people with PPO type plans.
Okay, so the main challenges of getting out of network, there's two things that happen to a practice. Well, really three things. So one, there's an impact on case acceptance. When you're out of network, it becomes a little bit harder to get the same type of acceptance rates that you do when you're in network. So that's number one, case acceptance is affected. Number two is retention. We know that when we get out of network, we're fighting to try to stay above retaining 50% of the people that are already coming to you to stay coming back to you. So if you're able to retain 60, 70% of, like, let's say you have a plan and there's 200 people on the plan and you decide to get out of network, well, what's that look like a year and a half from now? We're hoping that we keep above 50%. So let's say 120 out of the 200. It can be a little higher, depending on obviously the differences being in and out of network in each state and each insurance would be different. So that's definite impact. And then lastly is getting new patients. So new patient phone calls, people call, hey, are you in network? And if your team doesn't know how to answer that question, you get zero of those people all of a sudden. Whereas if they're trained, you should be able to get around 70% of those people still through the door. So when I say trained, meaning a script that they use, that they follow, and that they know like the back of their hand. When I say like the back of their hand, it's got to be so confident how they answer that question. It's got to sound like, hey, it's no big deal. We got a lot of patients with it. You're making a big deal out of nothing being out of network. You can still come here and we'll maximize your insurance. What works best for you, mornings or afternoons? They have to say it in that type of way to get around 70% of those people to schedule. And there's massive amount of training on that, believe it or not. It's not as easy as you think, getting people to do that correctly. It takes us months, and that's with AI software tracking and listening to phone calls, listening to each person, how they answer the question, coaching them on that. It takes a good 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get those numbers up to that caliber I'm talking about. So that's a huge impact. Those are the challenges to overcome. But there's things you can do in the meantime, Dr. Peterson, in other words, to set the practice up so that being out of network is not as big of a deal when you choose to exit plans. And one thing that we've talked about and that you're in favor of, and I am too, is membership. Can you talk about that and what that's like and how that can help ease, I guess, this price squeeze that's being put on us, this overhead squeeze?
Membership programs have become quite popular over the past decade. And when we first started promoting that, it was a novel idea. And now there are, I'm going to say, half a dozen companies that promote that they will help you establish your membership program with some caveats to consider. If you're looking at a membership program, you can look into those certainly, but remember, people that are going to manage it for you are going to take a piece of the action. And it isn't always necessary to do that. In fact, we have a lot of offices that do it completely themselves, and the systems really work quite well.
I would say the vast majority of our people, 80% do it themselves. So,
Almost all of them, I agree.
right.
The key to the whole idea behind a membership program is you're making it easy to become a patient, and you're making it easy to remain a patient. And you do that through attracting people first to come to your office. So your offers on your marketing are going to be different than if you're looking at growing your PPO side of the practice. So a PPO ad is going to be more about where you're located, and how quickly you can get them in and that you accept their insurance. Whereas a membership one will be for people who don't have any type of insurance, and it becomes easy to become a patient. Your initial visit is a bargain. Any place, frankly, from $49 to $99 typically for exam x-ray cleaning.
Mhm, mhm.
That is certainly not going to be a profit issue for you. You're not going to make any money off it, but what you're doing is trying to get people to become long-term patients. And these are people who don't have a dentist or often are changing or moved to town, but they don't have insurance. So cost is a big issue if you're a family of four with the typical average income in this country of $65,000 a year. So if you got 2 or 3 kids and you all need to go to the dentist and it costs $300 to have exam x-ray cleaning, that's a major dent in the budget. But if you can get that for a lesser amount, people like it. Then the second part is a discount on treatment. And this is another huge item. You know, as my wife tells me, everybody's looking for a discount. So typically people who join your membership program, which can be anywhere from $190 to $250, that's kind of the range we're seeing now.
Can I point something out here real quick?
Sure.
Because the thing I see is a lot of people at 299, 350. There's a price point that works, meaning where everybody joins, right? When you start to push the price point up, you're going to see resistance. You need to know these numbers. So when new patients come in, you should see around 80% of the people joining these plans. If it's well below that, if you're at like 50% or so, you're not going to get this effect that you're talking about, Dr. Peterson, where you're building a patient base that's not insurance based.
Right.
Uh, and if you're only getting 50% of the possibility or less to join your membership, you're not building that patient base up. It really needs to be 80, even 90% of these new patients joining it. And you'll start to see your amount of patients shift. So it might be 80, 70% that have insurance, where you want to get to more like where it's 50-50 or 60-40. So you're not heavily insurance based, quite frankly.
Exactly right. And with membership, there's several other advantages for the office. One being you get paid at the time of service, because that's a condition of receiving the discount. So no longer do you have to take the time, fill out the paperwork, or send it off to a broker to send it in and wait 30, 60, even 90 days, or to
Get it
receive
rejected, yes.
denials and require for more explanation. That costs you a lot of time, because there's a lot of money, because the time you wait for it, plus all the staff time to do all the paperwork. So you get less money, but you get it today. And that fits into the description of the velocity of money and the advantages of having money today instead of down the road. So there's big advantages to membership, and we have a number of offices that certainly have 30 to 40% of their patient base that is membership. Retired people love it, because many of them lose their insurance once they retire. And this will give them a great opportunity to stay with the doctor that they prefer, and to receive a discount for the treatment that they want. So we agree completely. Membership is a terrific tool to use in your future plans if you want to reduce your dependency on PPOs. One encouraging thing, if I might, some groups now that have actually increased some of their reimbursement levels. Unitas is a centralized broker for a number of other insurance companies, and they've actually increased, in some cases, significantly for the reimbursement levels. I've seen this in Texas, Oklahoma, and a few other South Central states. It may or may not apply to where you are, but at least we're seeing some signs of encouragement. On the other hand, we see some insurance companies that are going the opposite way, including one that used to bill itself as the dentist's insurance, and now it's not the dentist's by any stretch.
Yeah.
So look carefully at your reimbursement levels and look at your opportunities to improve them, because completely divorcing yourself from PPOs, you don't want to do that in any type of a premature fashion, or you might end up with a lot of chairs with nobody sitting in them.
Some things I've learned about getting out of network, actually pulling the plug. When you look at, like, I suggest always picking a plan that, has 100 people on it, that's maybe not huge plan to start with. And what you want to do is track and see how many of those people call and cancel and things like that in the first 60 days. So let's say you have 100 people on it, and you got maybe 20 people coming in over 60 days. What you want to see is something like at least 15 making their appointment, something like that, 14, 15, and actually coming through the door. If it's much lower than that, it means the bond with your practice is not as great as it could be. So there's two things that could cause that. So obviously how the practice is run in and of itself, and there's a lot of factors there, but it also could be the area. People's dependence on insurance can be greater depending on the area you live in. So I always start with a small plan and kind of see what happens. And it also tells you how many new patients you have to attract to offset the people you lose. So like I said, to give you the example of 100, well, we know we're probably going to lose 40. That means we've got to replace 40 through new patients. And that's over a 6-month period. So you can kind of do the math and figure out how much we have to have an increase as far as new patient flow to offset that. So a lot of times getting out of network means is not just all income to you. Usually it means an increase in marketing budget to offset. You can just kind of do the math, $150 to $170 per new patient, and you need to buy 40 of them over a 6-month period. That's going to cost $6,000 roughly. So $1,000 a month in marketing budget. Those are the kind of numbers you got to work out and know beforehand what it's really going to cost you in marketing. Of course, that leads to the other part of the story, which is making sure that the phones are answered right and that everybody has that down pat, or else you won't get the increase that you're looking for. So, and that's where we start. And then we kind of move plan after plan after plan, and we don't do it quickly. This is something that if your goal is to be completely out of network, it could take a year and a half to do it and do it smart. And at that same time, you're doing what Dr. Peterson is saying is ramping up the amount of uh, well, cash patients, people with no reimbursement at all through membership. And if you can do that at the same time, most offices can, I won't say completely get out of network, but certainly change the dynamic to where it's not so lopsided, where you've got such a vast majority of people in your PPO plans that you're in network with. So that's kind of the strategy real quick. It's something that if I was gonna do, I certainly would talk to one of us about it, and you certainly are free to take a call with one of us and just walk us through your numbers and your plan on how you want to get out of network and what you're thinking. Because the quickest and probably the thing that we see the most in terms of immediate overnight pancake of a practice is a doctor throwing out a bunch of plans all at once. That can have negative impacts really quickly. So definitely talk to one of us about it before you do it. Okay, that being said, there's other things that you can do in terms of trying to be less dependent on insurance. And Dr. Peterson, there's obviously services you can provide that aren't covered by insurance. So can you walk us through that and what that would look like and what kind of procedures we're talking about, but also how to get those to work?
Yeah, there's a number of things, and this is typically what you hear from consultants who are telling you to drop your insurance, and that is to get into some higher end procedures typically, or some services that are not covered by insurance. So the ones that we see are the most successful and actually tie in very nicely are sedation. IV sedation, even oral sedation can be extremely helpful because that attracts a different type of patient. It's an extreme fear patient, and I believe dental fear is much higher than you see published in some of the refereed and unrefereed journals.
Right.
So doing sedation almost always helps. I've seen practices grow tremendously very quickly from offering and promoting sedation. Now, obviously, there's state laws that have to be followed, and requirements for training and equipment and safety factors. Those have to be done, but well worth the time and the investment. Other things that can work are procedures such as implants, especially multi-supported appliances, all on fours, all on sixes, larger reconstructions. But those are not simple cases. Those are complex. There's training involved, but they can really be quite profitable, particularly if you develop your surgical skills so that you can do most or all of the cases in-house. If not, they'll work with a capable surgeon. But some things I've also heard other consultants promote, I don't agree with because I haven't seen the success. And that would be like sleep apnea treatment, would be TMD and facial pain. Not that these are not necessary and admirable areas to help people in, but I haven't seen very many instances where it's actually become anything close to as profitable as doing routine general dentistry. So don't be misled into thinking you're going to start a sleep center and people will be standing in line to pay you $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 for an appliance that will reposition their mandible and open up their airway more, because I've just never seen that.
I haven't either. In any, I mean, I've seen where they can get to 10, 15, but having it become at huge focus cost. In other words, to get it up to those levels and beyond, it takes a level of focus from the practice to do that at the sacrifice of the other stuff the practice is doing.
That's correct. The only office I've seen successfully do this is a doctor who has transitioned himself strictly to TMD facial pain, however, retained ownership, partial ownership of the restorative general dental practice. They are now in two separate next door buildings to each other, but he no longer does general dentistry. That now is done by three dentists who are partners with the restorative part. So he's maintained a strong portion of his original core business, dentistry, but what has been able to build up the TMD facial pain part to now it's a standalone building and standalone business. By the way, you don't expect to get a lot of referrals from other dentists in your area, because if you develop that, you're going to be working more with the medical community. And
I have seen that, but it's rare. It's like
it's rare.
it's rare. It's not. I have not seen a big win as far as becoming a sleep center and the whole riding off into the sunset. But I have seen it with the TMJ issue. So that I have seen. But again, it's I don't want to say it's like winning the lottery, but it's close. People set out in that direction, and yes, there are people that attain it, but it's kind of like being a cosmetic practice. It happens, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, not so much anymore. It was very common 20 years ago, but it's not so much anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are things that can work and not work. This is another, tell me what you found, Wes, but I see ads, promotions about billing medical insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm yet to see an
Same.
office, including facial pain TMD, which fits in that, where they're very successful with it. In fact, in one case, an office tried that for over a year. And then we did again a retrospective study, and we found they collected almost enough from all the medical billing they did to pay for one person's time that was spent doing all of the paperwork. So essentially, it was a total loser for them.
Yeah, I have not seen that either. And I've heard people go down that path, but no. There's some easy things to do, like we just talked about, get the membership going, get your people trained on how to answer out-of-network phone calls, take a small plan, get out of it and see what happens. Look at your case acceptance rate from those people and see if you're getting similar case acceptance. Look, if you can do that, then you can start moving on to the next plans, and that would be my suggestion. Stick with what we know is going to work. Again, stick with known winners before you start chasing things that are, I want to say, long shots. First thing I would do is start building up that membership. Track how many new patients come to the practice, how many of them accept the membership that are offered it, and shoot for that 80% success rate. This could require bonuses for team members, prizes for most memberships sold, things like that to get people excited about it, get your team excited about it. And remember, what gets tracked improves. So selling membership, you have to track it and you have to make a big deal out of it. But that is your way, really your way out, is building up that really fee-for-service following. Because these people that you're getting now, what they do is they hit the practice and glance off. And they might even do some dentistry, but they don't stick around. And with membership, they do stick around. That's the great part, is retention is very strong through membership. So I would definitely start there and building that up. So, all right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Dr. Peterson.
Thank you.